My son nearly died in the emergency room. But when I texted mom, we're busy with your sister. Then she mocked my son. So I canceled their mortgage payment, their car loan, and every bill I was covering for them. Hey Reddit! So I've been sitting on this story for weeks now, going back and forth on whether to post it. But honestly, I need to get this off my chest and figure my Reddit account is the best place to do it. So buckle up. For context, I've 36 male, been married for 10 years to my wife Cindy, 35 female. We met back in college. She was this smart pre-med student who somehow ended up at the same crappy campus party I was at. We hit it off talking about 90s cartoons while everyone else was doing keg stands. Started dating, moved in together after graduation, got married a few years later when I landed my first decent finance job. We tried for a kid for almost 3 years. Lots of negative pregnancy tests, a couple early miscarriages, and some expensive fertility treatments later, Cindy finally got pregnant with our son, 8 male, Peter. We were beyond stoked. Then came the diagnosis of Down syndrome during a prenatal screening at 15 weeks. Some doctors actually suggested options, but we never even considered it. We wanted this kid, extra chromosome and all. Peter's the best kid you could ask for, yeah. Smart, funny as hell, and genuinely the kindest soul I've ever met. The kid remembers everyone's birthday, even my coworkers he's only met twice, gives the best hugs, and has this ability to make friends with literally anyone from the grocery store cashier to the grumpy old dude down the street. His teachers constantly tell us how he lights up their classroom. Yeah, we deal with some health and development stuff, but watching him figure out the world in his own way is the best part of my life. Now about my family. Growing up, the dynamic was always pretty clear. Maggie was the golden child who could literally set the house on fire, and my parents would be like, "Aw, she's just expressing herself." Meanwhile, I'd get lectured for leaving a light on in my room, because electricity costs money, you know. I remember this one time in high school when Maggie failed 3 classes and my parents hired her a private tutor. That same semester, I asked for help with a $75 science competition fee and got told to find a way to pay for it yourself, because that's how you learn responsibility. So I mowed lawns for 2 weekends straight. The competition? Won first place. Did my parents come? Nah. They were at Maggie's dance recital where she was, no joke, a tree in the background, or when we both needed cars for college. Maggie got a brand new car for her birthday. Me? You should save up for something reliable. It'll teach you the value of money. So I worked night shifts at this sketchy gas station for 6 months while taking a full course load to buy this absolute death trap of a Toyota that leaked oil like it was going out of style. The thing is, I just accepted this as normal. Like, yeah, that makes sense. Maggie needs more help because she's less capable. Talk about drinking the Kool-Aid. But whatever. I put my head down, got through college with minimal debt, unlike Maggie's art history degree that my parents paid for in full, and built my career in finance. Turns out all that figure it out yourself BS actually prepared me for the real world way better than Maggie's free ride did. So when Cindy got pregnant, everyone was excited. Even when the diagnosis of DS came. Cindy and I took exactly 5 minutes to process it before deciding nothing changed. We were having this baby, and we were going to love the hell out of him. My parents seemed supportive enough, though I caught some concerned glances between them. Maggie, though? She started with the comments almost immediately. "Do you really want to go through with this?" was the first one, whispered to me when Cindy was in the bathroom right after we shared the Down syndrome diagnosis. Then there was the baby shower where she kept referring to him as the special baby to everyone instead of just using his name like a normal person. After Peter was born, it only got worse. "At least Down syndrome kids are always happy, right?" she'd say, like he was some kind of perpetually smiling cartoon character instead of a complex human being. Or she'd pull this concerned face and say, "It's so brave of you guys to take this on," whenever Peter did something completely normal like laugh or cry. She'd always find ways to make his milestones seem like miracles. Wow, he can actually use a spoon? With this exaggerated shock, as if she'd expected him to eat with his hands forever. Then there were the comments she'd make when she thought we couldn't hear, like telling her friends, "I don't know how my brother does it," with this dramatic sigh, or asking Cindy if she ever gets any sleep with that fake sympathy tone. Once I overheard her telling my mom that Peter was actually not that weird looking for a Down syndrome kid, like it was supposed to be a compliment. She'd constantly ask if we'd found special schools yet, even when he was only 2. Or she'd bring toys meant for much younger kids as gifts, completely ignoring his actual interests and abilities. "I wasn't sure what would be appropriate for his level," she'd say with this condescending smile. My wife spotted this toxic behavior from day one and called Maggie out. "He's a baby, not a burden." Cindy told her after one particularly shitty comment at Peter's first birthday, when Maggie loudly wondered if he would ever be potty trained right in front of our friends. Maggie immediately burst into tears and ran to my parents, who spent the rest of the party comforting her while giving Cindy the cold shoulder. That set the pattern for the next 7 years. She'd make these passive-aggressive jabs, Cindy would defend our son, I would call her out, and Maggie would play victim, and my parents would rush to console poor. Meanwhile, about 7 years ago, my dad's construction business went under during the economic downturn. They were in serious financial trouble, facing foreclosure on their house and drowning in credit card debt. Without telling anyone, I stepped in and started paying their mortgage, car loan, and consolidated their credit card debt. We're talking about $3,500 a month, give or take. I didn't mind. I was doing well at my job, getting regular promotions, and they're my parents. I thought that's what family does for each other. Maggie, by the way, never offered to help them financially. She was too busy trying to make her boutique clothing store successful and living beyond her means. She's 34, lives in a fancy apartment she can barely afford, and still gets regular loans from my parents. My parents are in their mid-60s and should be planning for retirement, but instead, they're still financially supporting their fully grown daughter while I'm supporting all of them. That's the setup. Now for what went down last month, that changed everything. I was leading a team meeting for a major client pitch when my phone started blowing up with calls from Peter's school. We have a strict no phones policy during client meetings, but something in my gut told me to check it. 4 missed calls in 5 minutes. Definitely an emergency. I stepped out and took the call on the 5th ring. It was the nurse from Peter's school. She straight dropped the news. Peter had a seizure during gym class. The ambulance is already on its way to Memorial Hospital. My blood went cold. A seizure? He's never had seizures before. What happened? It was sudden. He was playing and just collapsed. Started convulsing. The gym teacher acted quickly, and the paramedics are with him now. They said to tell you to meet them at Memorial's ER. I don't even remember ending the call. Just told my VP family emergency and bolted. I texted Cindy on my way to the car, and she said she'd meet me at the hospital. The entire drive there, my mind was racing with worst-case scenarios. Peter had never had seizures before. Nothing in his medical history or his Down syndrome condition suggested this could happen. I must have run 3 red lights getting to that hospital. When I got to the ER, they were still stabilizing him. Cindy hadn't arrived yet. I rushed back and saw my son, my little buddy, looking so fragile on that gurney with oxygen tubes and monitors attached to him. His face was this scary grayish color I'd never seen before. His eyes were open, but unfocused. He didn't seem to recognize me at first, which scared the shit out of me. "Peter, buddy, Daddy's here," I said, taking his small hand in mine. His fingers gripped mine weakly. The doctor explained they needed to run tests to figure out what caused the seizure. "Has he ever had one before?" they asked. "Never. Nothing even close." They mentioned they'd need to do an MRI, blood work, and possibly a spinal tap. I was trying to process all this while keeping it together for Peter. He looked so scared, and I couldn't fall apart in front of him. I sent a group text to my parents and sister. "Peter had a seizure at school. We're at Memorial Hospital ER. It's serious." Cindy arrived about 15 minutes later, rushing to Peter's side. She's always been the stronger one in crisis situations. She immediately started asking the doctors detailed questions while I held Peter's hand and tried to keep him calm. I expected my parents to at least call, if not drop everything and come. They literally live 15 minutes from the hospital. They're always talking about how much they love their grandkids, though they spend 10 times more time with Maggie's kids than with Peter. After sitting there for 20 minutes holding Peter's little hand while he drifted in and out of consciousness, I finally got a reply from my mom. "Sorry to hear that. We're with Maggie today helping with her boutique. Hope he feels better soon." I read that message like 5 times trying to process it. My son was in the ER after having a seizure, and they were helping Maggie with her freaking boutique? I showed Cindy when she came back from talking with the doctors, and she just shook her head. She'd been telling me for years that my parents didn't care about Peter the same way they cared about Maggie's kids. "They're showing you who they really are," she said quietly. "Believe them." I put my phone away and focused on Peter. The doctors were concerned enough to admit him for overnight observation and more tests. They mentioned words like neurological evaluation and were concerned about how the seizure might relate to his Down syndrome. We were terrified but trying not to show it in front of Peter. That evening, after they'd moved Peter to a proper room and he was sleeping, Cindy went to get us some food from the cafeteria. I checked my phone again, hoping my parents had come to their senses and were at least checking in. Instead, I had another text from my mom, a picture of Maggie's boutique with some new furniture arrangement. The text read, "All finished helping Maggie set up her new display. She's been so stressed with the expansion plans. Poor thing needed our help today. The freaking audacity. She acted like they lived on a different planet. I showed it to Cindy. They're sending you pictures of furniture while our son is getting brain scans? She whispered, careful not to wake Peter. That's a new low, even for them. We spent a restless night in uncomfortable hospital chairs. The nurses were great, checking on Peter regularly and bringing us extra blankets and coffee. By morning, Peter was more alert, but confused about where he was and why. Explaining to an 8-year-old why he had to stay in the hospital and get tests was one of the hardest conversations I've ever had. After the doctors came by for morning rounds, scheduling an MRI and more blood work, I decided to call my mom. I thought maybe if she heard my voice, understood how serious this was, she'd show some actual concern. She answered all cheerful. Morning, sweetie, like nothing was wrong. I kept my voice steady and explained that Peter was still in the hospital, that the doctors were concerned enough to order comprehensive neurological testing, and that we were terrified. There was a pause. Then I heard her cover the phone partially and say something to someone else in the room. Then I clearly heard Maggie's voice in the background say, "Is he still being dramatic about Peter?" Followed by snickering. Then my mom came back on and said, "Well, kids are resilient. Maybe he's just being a bit dramatic for attention. You know how these Down syndrome kids can be for getting what they want." I felt something inside me snap. The phone nearly cracked in my grip. "Who's there with you?" I demanded. "Oh, just Maggie. We're going over some loan paperwork for her second location." "Did you just suggest my son is faking a seizure? For attention?" No, I just meant..." "I heard what you said, and I heard Maggie in the background. You both think this is funny? My son could have permanent brain damage and you're laughing about it? Now you're overreacting. Don't call us again. Don't come to the hospital. We don't need your kind of support." I hung up. My hands were shaking with rage. Cindy had heard enough of my side of the conversation to know what happened. She put her arm around me. "I'm done making excuses for them," I told her. Completely done. The next 2 days were a blur of tests, consultations, and worried conversations with doctors. They eventually determined that Peter had experienced a tonic-clonic seizure, likely triggered by a combination of factors related to his Down syndrome. They started him on anti-seizure medication and scheduled follow-up appointments with a pediatric neurologist. During this whole time, not a single call or text from my parents or Maggie asking how Peter was doing. Cindy's parents, who live 3 states away, called twice daily for updates and sent a care package to the hospital. My best friend Vincent brought us home-cooked meals and clean clothes. But from my own family, radio silence. That night, after the doctors finally stabilized Peter enough that Cindy could stay with him, I went home to shower and change. I sat down at my computer and logged into all my banking accounts. For 7 years, I'd been paying my parents' mortgage of $2,100 a month. Their car payment was another $450. I'd also been paying about $900 monthly toward their consolidated credit card debt. All auto payments from my account, all set up so they'd never have to worry. I canceled every single one, called the mortgage company to inform them I would no longer be making payments, contacted the auto loan company to remove myself from the account, canceled all automatic transfers. Then I went into my investment accounts and removed them as beneficiaries. Changed my will too, just to be thorough. I'd name them as Peter's guardians if anything happened to Cindy and me. That was definitely getting changed to Cindy's sister and her husband, who adored Peter. I didn't tell my parents what I'd done, didn't warn them, just cut them off completely. It would take them until the beginning of next month to realize what had happened, when their mortgage payment bounced and their credit cards declined. When I returned to the hospital the next morning, Peter was doing better. The medication seemed to be working, and his color was coming back. Cindy had gotten some sleep, and the doctors were talking about possibly discharging him in a day or two with a strict follow-up schedule. For the first time in days, I felt like I could breathe. As I sat there watching Peter eat his breakfast, hospital pancakes that he declared were almost as good as Daddy's, I realized I didn't even miss my parents' involvement. All they would have done is make this about themselves, or worse, about Maggie. 3 days later, we were home. Peter was on a new medication regimen and doing well, though he'd need to take it easy for a while. I took a week off work to be with him, and Cindy's mom came to stay with us for a few days to help out. That's when my phone exploded with calls and texts from my mom. I ignored them all until she finally left a frantic voicemail. "The bank says our mortgage payment is late. My car payment bounced. There's some issue with the accounts. Call me back immediately." I waited until that evening when I knew they'd both be home and called her back. "The credit card was declined at the grocery store," she said immediately when she picked up. "And the bank sent a notice about the mortgage." "What's going on?" My voice was cold. "You made your priorities very clear. You chose Maggie's boutique displays over your grandson's health crisis." You and Maggie mocked my son's medical emergency and his disability. I'm done financially supporting people who show zero compassion for my child." There was a shocked silence then. "That's not fair," she cried. "Maggie needed us that day. We're helping her expand her business. You've always been jealous of the attention she gets." I actually laughed at that. "Jealous? I've been paying your bills for 7 years without a word of complaint. Maggie has never contributed a cent to help you, yet she gets all your time and concern. My son has a medical emergency, and you both laugh about it. You can ask Maggie to cover your bills from now on. You can't do this to us!" She was openly crying now. "We're your parents!" Parents who couldn't be bothered to visit their grandson in the hospital. Parents who mocked a child with Down syndrome for having a seizure. Those aren't the kind of parents I want in my life or my son's life. My dad got on the phone then, yelling about how I couldn't just pull the rug out from under them, that they'd lose the house, that I was being cruel. "Should have thought about that before you decided furniture was more important than your grandson," I replied. "You're on your own now." "We didn't know it was that serious," he protested. "Bullshit. I told you he was in the ER. I told you it was serious. You chose not to believe it because it was inconvenient for you and Maggie. That's on you, not me. So you're just going to let us lose our house? After everything we've done for you?" That made me laugh again. "What exactly have you done for me lately? Or for Peter? Name one thing." He couldn't. Instead, he started in on how Maggie needed their help more than I did. How I'd always been the strong one who could take care of himself. "Yeah, so strong I've been carrying all 3 of you financially for 7 years. Funny how that works? Goodbye, Dad." I hung up feeling lighter than I had in years. Cindy, who'd been listening to my side of the conversation, gave me a high five. "About damn time," she said. The next few days brought a barrage of texts and calls from both my parents and Maggie. I blocked Maggie's number after the 3rd message calling me a selfish asshole for abandoning our parents. My parents' messages cycled between anger, guilt-tripping, and finally pathetic begging. I didn't respond to any of them. About a week later, my cousin Nick called me. He seemed uncomfortable, like he was betraying a family secret. "Look, man, I heard what went down with your parents and all that, but there's something you should know that might make you feel better about cutting them off." "I'm listening," I said, not really expecting much. "So you know how your parents were helping Maggie that day at her boutique?" "Yeah, setting up furniture or something." "No, man, not just that. They were at the bank with her. She convinced them to co-sign a $200,000 business loan for her 2nd location. They put their house up as collateral." I nearly dropped my phone. "The house I've been paying the mortgage on?" "Exactly. My wife works at First National. She's not supposed to tell me this stuff, but you know how it is. Maggie's been pressuring your parents for months to back her expansion. They finally agreed. And that's what they were doing the day your kid was in the hospital. So while I was covering their living expenses, thinking they were barely getting by, they were secretly leveraging assets I was paying for to fund Maggie's business expansion. And that's not all," Nick continued. "Maggie's been telling everyone that Peter just had a little fainting spell, and you're using it to control your parents and punish them for helping her instead of you. She's painting you as jealous and manipulative." "Of course she is," I sighed. "Thanks for letting me know, Nick." "No problem, man. For what it's worth, I think you did the right thing. They've been taking advantage of you for years." That evening, I got an email from Maggie, the first contact she'd initiated since this all started. It was short. "You need to start paying Mom and Dad's bills again. They're stressed and it's affecting their health. Stop being petty about a little hospital visit. Not everything is about you and your kid." I didn't respond. I blocked her email. Then I went into Peter's room, where he was building an elaborate Lego creation, and spent the next hour helping him construct what he called a super castle for superheroes. His words were still a bit slurred from the medication, but his creativity was as vibrant as ever. 2 weeks after cutting them off, my dad showed up at our house unannounced. Peter was napping, and Cindy almost didn't let my dad in. But I decided to hear what he had to say. He looked rough, unshaven, dark circles under his eyes, wearing a wrinkled shirt that had seen better days. When he sat down at our kitchen table, he seemed older than his 65 years. He started with excuses about how they didn't realize how serious it was and how Maggie really did need their help that day. He talked about how they never meant to hurt us or Peter, and how it was all just a big misunderstanding. I let him talk himself out, then asked one question. "Did you put your house up as collateral for Maggie's business loan?" The color drained from his face. "How did you? Doesn't matter. Is it true?" He nodded, looking at the floor. "She had a dream, and we wanted to support her. You've always been able to take care of yourself. So I take care of myself and you, while you fund Maggie's dreams? That's your idea of fair?" He tried to explain how Maggie isn't strong like you and needs more support, but I'd heard it all before. It was the same excuse they'd been using since we were kids. Here's what's going to happen, I cut him off. You and Mom are on your own financially. Forever. I'm done. As for Peter, you've lost the privilege of being his grandparents. You chose Maggie over him when he was in crisis, and I'll never give you the chance to hurt him again. You can't keep our grandson from us, he protested, showing a flash of the anger I'd expected earlier. I'm not keeping anyone from anything. You removed yourselves from his life when you couldn't be bothered to visit him in the hospital, when you mocked his condition, when you laughed at his seizure. You did this, not me. We never meant. Intent doesn't matter, your actions do. And your actions showed me exactly who you are and what you value. It's not Peter and it's not me. It's only ever been Maggie. That's not true. We love all our grandchildren equally. I actually laughed at that. When was the last time you spent a full day with Peter? Just him? Because you spent 3 days helping Maggie with her boutique last month. The month before that, you took her kids to Disney for a weekend. When have you ever done something like that for Peter? He couldn't answer. That's what I thought. You'd better go now. Cindy will be home soon, and she's a lot less forgiving than I am. He got up slowly, like his joints hurt. At the door, he turned back. We're going to lose the house, you know. The bank called yesterday. That sounds like a Maggie problem to me, I replied. She's the one who convinced you to put it up as collateral. He left without another word. That evening, I told Cindy everything. About the loan, about Maggie's lies to the family, all of it. She wasn't surprised. I've been telling you for years they're toxic, she said. I'm just glad you finally see it too. We decided that weekend to start looking for a new house. We'd been in our current place for 6 years, and it was great, but it was also too close to my parents. They lived about 10 minutes away, which had seemed convenient when we bought the place. Now it felt suffocating. A month later, Nick called to give me an update. Maggie's second boutique location failed spectacularly, closed after just 6 weeks. She couldn't make the loan payments, which meant my parents were now on the hook for the full $200,000. They had to put their house on the market, but were struggling to sell it for enough to cover the loan. It gets better, Nick said. Maggie got evicted from her apartment for non-payment. Guess where she's living now? No way. Yep, moved back in with your parents. She's supposedly there to help them through this difficult time. But from what my mom says, she's just making their lives hell. Complaining about everything, not contributing financially, treating their house like a hotel. And the cherry on top? She got fired from her boutique job last week. For what? Stealing merchandise. Apparently, she'd been taking clothes and reselling them online for months. The owner finally caught on and fired her. So now she's completely dependent on your parents, who are about to lose their house because of her. I didn't feel the satisfaction I thought I would. Just a weary sense that justice sometimes arrives in its own way. How's the little man doing? Nick asked, changing the subject. Much better. The medication is working, and the neurologist thinks we might be able to reduce the dosage in a few months if he stays seizure-free. He's back at school part-time and loving it. That's awesome, man. You guys should come over for a barbecue soon. The kids miss playing together. I promised we would, and we actually did the following weekend. It was nice having family who actually gave a damn. Meanwhile, we found a great house in a neighborhood about 30 minutes away. It was a bit more expensive than our current place, but it had everything we wanted. A great backyard, an extra bedroom that could be a therapy space for Peter, and best of all, it was near a school with an excellent special needs program. We made an offer, and it was accepted. The day we signed the closing papers, I got a call from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. It was my mother. Her voice sounded tired and thin. We're losing the house. The bank is foreclosing next month. I waited, not giving her anything. Maggie can't find a job. Your father's health is declining from the stress. We don't know what we're going to do. Still, I said nothing. Can you at least help us with a rental? Something small we can afford on Social Security? For family's sake? No, I said finally. I can't. But we're family. We made one mistake. It wasn't one mistake. It was a pattern of choices that showed me exactly where I stand with you, where Peter stands with you. I'm not interested in supporting people who see my son as less worthy of love and concern than Maggie's furniture. That's not fair. Life's not fair. Ask Maggie for help. She's the one who got you into this mess. I hung up and blocked the number. We moved into our new house the following week. Peter loves it, especially his new room that we decorated with a space theme per his request. He started at his new school and came home every day with stories about his new friends and his super cool teacher, Miss Rivera. Cindy's parents came to visit for a week to help us settle in, bringing homemade meals and genuine love for their grandson. They sat through every one of Peter's detailed Lego explanations with authentic interest and took him to the park every afternoon, while Cindy and I unpacked. 2 months later, Nick texted me a link to a Facebook post. It was my mom, doing what she does best, seeking sympathy. She'd posted a long, woe is me screed about how they'd lost their home and had to move into a small apartment, how Maggie was struggling to find work in this economy, and how families should support each other through tough times. The comments were full of sympathy and offers of help from distant relatives and church friends who didn't know the real story. One comment caught my eye, though. My Aunt Linda, my dad's sister, had written, "Maybe if you hadn't ignored your grandson's medical emergency to help Maggie get a loan she couldn't repay, things would be different. Actions have consequences." I screenshotted that one and sent it to Cindy, who replied with a chef's kiss emoji. Yesterday marked 6 months since Peter's seizure. We celebrated with his favorite dinner, spaghetti and meatballs, and ice cream sundaes. He's been seizure-free for 5 months, and his neurologist is cautiously optimistic about reducing his medication at our next appointment. Cindy asked me last night if I ever regretted cutting my parents off. I thought about it while watching Peter show us his latest art project from school, a colorful painting of what he called our super family. Not for a second, I told her. I regret not doing it sooner. The truth is, our life is more peaceful now. No more walking on eggshells around Maggie. No more making excuses for my parents' favoritism. No more financial drain from supporting people who couldn't be bothered to show up when it mattered. Sometimes the family you're born into isn't the family that deserves you. I chose my son over toxic people who happen to share my DNA. And honestly, it's the easiest decision I've ever made. Edit. Thanks for all the awards and supportive comments. To answer some common questions. 1. Yes, I did actually call the loan officer at the bank to make sure they knew I wasn't responsible for the loan Maggie took out. They confirmed my name wasn't on any of the paperwork. 2. Some people asked if I'm worried about my parents' retirement. Not my problem anymore. They made their choice when they decided Maggie's boutique was more important than their grandson's health. 3. A few comments suggested I'm being too harsh and should reconcile for Peter's sake. Peter is thriving without their conditional love and subtle digs about his disability. He deserves better than grandparents who see him as less than his cousins. 4. About legal issues with me suddenly stopping payments. I was never legally obligated to make them. I wasn't on the mortgage or car loan. I was making voluntary payments directly to their accounts. I had every right to stop. 5. And no, I'm not willing to share what specific neurological condition Peter was diagnosed with. That's private medical information. But he's doing great now, and that's what matters.